What's up, what's up, what's up? It's Willie T with Sorry We're Stoned, and this is the Canna Honey Tea Party. It's going down right here at the shop. We got Canna Breeze in the house. Definitely. We got some great people who are about to enjoy some delicious tea. That's my good friend. Say hello. We hope you guys tune in. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow. Also, check out the Canna Honey website. What's the website called?
RealCannaHoneyCBD.com.
RealCannaHoneyCBD.com. Check it out. Follow that. Make sure to give them a like on Instagram too. Is it the same on Instagram and everything?
It's the same.
Perfect. So, we're about to serve up some tea and have a good time. And feel free to drop any questions that you have about the endocannabinoid system, hemp, THC, anything you got, you can drop it in the comments. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Facebook. We'll make sure those comments get to our special guest who will be tuning in very soon with a live feed. So, let's have a party, people. What do you guys say? Yeah, let's do this. Perfect. Let's serve up some tea. Boom.
I'll come on up for tea.
Okay, good.
I'm not afraid to be first.
So I've got
Yes, sure is. Way to go.
Listen, we're just some really delicious chai options.
I love chai.
I have the blue lotus with turmeric. I have the anise.
I'm going to drink the non-dairy milk. That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for making tea. That's lovely. It's a lovely thing for somebody else to make tea for you. It's a little richer.
My favorite ways.
It's hard to go wrong with chai for spices, you know.
Oh, that's so good. I did not bring the list.
It's all good. You'll come to school anyway. So that's fine.
Yeah.
I had found Canna online.
Oh, you did?
I did. I had it.
She is amazing.
Thank you kindly.
You're
Yep.
welcome.
I appreciate it. Ooh, that's beautiful. Ooh.
Hi. All right, so I've got these herbal teas, and then I have different chai mixes. Let's do this one. The honey lavender. Okay. And here, I'm going to stir your hot water and honey together first. Oh, that's fine.
This is
And
CBD.
you have
This
milk
is
if you want.
CBD.
No.
Okay. And we've, infused it into this organic. So everybody should know what you get.
And then I'm thinking, when you're done with your tea bag, I have, well, he has a trash bag here that I can pass it out.
Okay.
Get that nice and mixed up for you. Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And they seem
Okay,
to
folks.
really respond to this.
Hi.
We love it.
So I've got these, I don't know if you're a chai fan, I have these delicious chai blends from Blue
The taste
Lotus.
isn't for everyone, but
There's one with
it's
star
planted.
anise, one with turmeric,
I
and
agree.
this one is a decaf
And,
red tea. And
You know, I'd like to try the turmeric because
Yeah, you bet.
we should
And I
drink
have
that every
non-dairy
day.
milk.
shouldn't we?
Yeah, and non-dairy milk and regular half and half if you would like some cream in your chai.
Yeah, let's do half and half. I guess, yeah.
That'll be good. Definitely. These teas too are amazing. Blue Lotus is a really awesome company out of Eugene. They make really, really good chai.
Does it have to have a little bit of THC?
Love getting local.
Yeah, Oceana sells like their little packets, and then they also make like a tin that I think has probably like 45 servings or something in it, like quite a bit.
Where do you get these then?
Well, I have a wholesale account, so I ordered like big batches through them, and then I am planning to make a CBD honey with their Thai herbs in it. So basically, what you can do is just stir the honey into hot water and add your milk, and you have CBD chai. So it's like cutting a step out of like making honey, basically. So yeah, so they're gonna partner with us to
Yeah,
do
supposedly.
a chai CBD honey. It's gonna be really cool. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What would you like? I have options. The chais I recommend. I have a couple that are caffeinated and one decaf.
I'll try the chai. The caffeine.
The caffeinated?
Yeah.
Okay. This one has turmeric in it.
Yeah.
The other one's like a star anise, so it's got like a licorice flavor. Do you preference?
Turmeric. Give that a shot.
Hey, don't feel bad. Matt was actually same spot on the 24th of last month. I sat down. I put my scrubbers up there tired. Came over to shake it.
We're all going fast over the ride.
We cut from video.
Everyone's trying this turmeric chai.
That's what I'm thinking I'll try too.
It is caffeinated. You want dairy or non-dairy milk in
Pink
your chai?
explosion everywhere.
Just milk, normal milk will be fine.
Some half an
I
hour.
was thinking of like a whole already made thing of chai. It was, I never even opened it, and I went like this to shake it, and the whole thing came off.
Beautiful.
It was like on top of my refrigerator.
Chai with the CBD flavor.
Look like one of those when you leave your blender lid off.
Seriously,
Yeah,
right?
man.
I had no excuse. I mean, I was like, it was like
That'd be
the
my
morning. I was
formula.
like, what the
Wanna do that
hell?
one?
Yeah, right.
They just failed. I've been.
So we'll just focus on YouTube.
So you gonna get something to drink, baby?
You know what I was thinking might be a cool idea? Is maybe to send Wilma a jar of honey as a kind of a introduction.
Oh yeah. Well, I can just bring it in my carry-on.
Why don't I do that? I'll set it all up and
Yeah.
work that out there.
Yes, mine too. I think mine too should be good. Is that good enough?
I'll connect with him, give him the overview, give you the contact info.
Yeah, if you want to shoot me in. Hot mic. Hot mic and hot tea.
I have a door open.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What's your flavor?
What you got?
Got all these amazing chais from Blue Lotus Chai.
Let's do the Blue Lotus try, yeah.
You want caffeine or non-caffeinated?
Oh, non.
Non? Okay, so I'll give you the red chai here. They're all delicious, but
Oh, I love chai.
their chais are amazing. They're just the powder dissolves right in the hot water, and then you just add your honey. I'm gonna make a CBD honey with their chai powder in it.
Oh, that is.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that'd be
all you
nice to have that
do-
taste.
And you just have to stir it in your hot water
Oh,
and add
that sounds so
some,
good.
add a little bit of cream and
No,
you're
that's
done.
looking like my jar now. My jar's almost gone.
Down
So
to
I
the
use
bottom.
like tablespoon.
Would you like half and half? Or?
No, oh no. Yeah, well, drinking extra extremely hot tea is really good for you. Did you know that? When it's really hot like that,
What?
you're not supposed to drink it. No, seriously, this is the
Okay.
truth. So there's a lot of like
Yeah.
stuff in the tea plants that have
We're gonna be
that
watching
high
this little TV
temperatures
here in a moment, so you may
that
wanna
can toxins.
Oh, right. Like
So once it
yeah.
cools down a bit to where you
Better to
can,
drink.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Just a little tidbit. I learned that. So I'm a true
Good,
tea
good to
connoisseur.
Awesome.
Well, we got some
What
Canna.
would you like?
Canna honey tea for you.
Caffeine? Yes. Try the turmeric one?
Yes, please.
The only other cook we had today screwed his knee up last night, so he went home as soon as I got there. I sent him pictures of it of his
I
maiden
didn't
voyage.
miss it.
Yeah.
I was like, where's my dog?
Willie didn't even say anything back about it.
I didn't.
No.
My bad. Did I see it though?
Facebook said you saw it.
Oh, yeah. Facebook's always ratting on you.
Thank you, thank
Do you
you.
want half and half or non-dairy
I
milk?
know. I was talking with Alicia the other day.
Yes.
And I was like,
I
trying to
did have.
chip it,
I
but
got
I was like stuffing my
the
face with
ripple.
food.
Okay, we're
Plant-based protein. It's pretty good. Nice nice and creamy. So it's like half and half. But not.
Oh, look at that beautiful hemp filled in our feet. Isn't that amazing?
Thank you. Let me know how that is.
Okay.
What would you like,
So,
sir?
Yeah, what's
Can
up,
I get ya?
Canna, honey?
The chives are amazing if you like chai.
Oh, I want chai.
Okay.
Chai it is.
Caffeinated or decaf?
Caffeinated.
Okay, there's a turmeric and then there's also this star anise.
Oh my gosh, there's so many choices. You just like got it going. Which one's the best?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I probably would prefer turmeric. I'm not a big anise fan.
Let's do that then.
Come on up here.
So,
And while you're, then I'm
and tell
gonna
me
give
a
you
little bit more about your honey.
So,
Tell me about the deliciousness.
So delicious.
What makes Canna honey special? We use organic clover honey from Glory Bee over in Eugene.
Slur.
And then we
Ooh,
use full spectrum hemp oil.
full spectrum hemp
People
oil.
would maybe think, you hear the word RSO. That's full spectrum. So we're using everything in the plant. We're not getting rid of any terpenes, nothing. So everything's in
Full
there.
terpene profile.
All the good stuff. This
Yeah.
honey actually has a good amount of CBG and CBC in it too.
That was CBG and CBC.
So some other cannabinoids you can look into to learn more about those.
Definitely, you gotta check those out.
Yeah, and then the family that makes our oil is a really sweet family over in Eugene. They have a really awesome hemp farm, and they process the oil. And then my mother, who couldn't be here tonight, is the amazing woman that crafted this recipe. So
Oh wow! So your mom made the recipe for this delicious
Yes,
honey,
yes,
and it's all Oregon based.
all Oregon,
It's full spectrum too.
full
Love it.
spectrum.
I love it. I am
People
looking
are
forward to
saying they've tried a lot of CBD stuff, and this is the only thing that works for them. So
this. Nice, nice.
milk or non-dairy milk?
Milk.
Okay,
Yeah.
you got it.
Not cheese, nice and sweet. Oh yeah.
Creamy.
You look at
There
that.
you
It's
go.
so delicious.
Right, enjoy.
Woo! Oh man! Happy fat guy dance! Happy fat guy dance! Happy fat guy dance!
Yeah, try that.
All right.
Hello, how are you?
Love
Good,
that.
how are you doing?
Yep, there it is. What can I get you?
I know she wants one of the chais.
With the turmeric?
Yeah.
Okay. And how about you? I have caffeinated. I also have decaf options. I have a decaf chai that's made with red tea, and then I have these. This one has caffeine, but these other three are herbal. If you don't want caffeine.
I'll probably take the vanilla spice. Use a little caffeine.
Why not, right?
Exactly.
The CBD will kind of keep it on the low side for you. And do you think she would like regular milk or non-dairy for her chai?
Milk. Regular milk or non-dairy? Regular milk or non-dairy?
For the chai?
For the chai.
Make it a little creamy? Regular? Okay. Yeah, you bet.
Minimize or growing up
That's nice and melted for you.
knowledge of whatever works.
Okay, here is her chai, and I will get yours going. Yeah, try it. Yeah.
And
Would you like any milk or non-dairy milk in your tea?
Yeah, I'll take some of the normal milk.
Okay. Move that down in there. And then, okay. We got a minute to steep, and then I think we've got a trash if you want to get rid of your bag here in a minute.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, and then the shop next door.
Cool. Sweet. Well, this is fun.
Yeah.
She's been my top reader so far.
I'm gonna have to polish off this down here.
yeah. That's amazing.
Hopefully I captured the audio of you saying that.
Polish off.
Polish off this jar. One
That's,
jar down.
that's the secret to Canna honey. Polish off the whole jar.
Yeah. Ah, thank you.
You're welcome. I like that red chai. Where'd you get that one from?
This is Blue Lotus also. They're a company out of Eugene.
Oh.
And they
Because
sell
mostly
their...
I just buy a whole leaf tea.
Dude, their powdered teas are great, and they're
Right.
made with really good quality herbs. They sell it over at Oceana. Yeah.
Yep. How you doing? This guy right here.
Sorry. I'm with Partners Technical Services.
Oh, now is a horrible time, but let's do it.
Ooh, I love it.
Oh yeah, please.
Oh, hey, good to see ya.
Come on up. What can I get you?
For some reason, my
I've got 3 different kinds of the Blue Lotus chai. I have
That's always good.
turmeric and star anise, and then I have the red chai that's decaf.
Well, the turmeric is good.
Yeah, you bet. It's been a popular one tonight.
That's the one.
Alright.
I know, and I'm like, I always tell my lady, I was like,
Oh, can I get you one?
Pride
There's
bracelet?
either
Heck
this
yeah.
one or there's all bead one.
No, I like the rainbow.
Well, they're all rainbow.
rainbow.
They're all rainbow.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna go get you one.
Whichever one. I'm gonna just
Clean it up.
give you the final countdown here. You'll get a nice hefty scoop.
Will
Would
you
you
turn
like
off,
half and half or
Donnie? Will you turn
non-dairy?
off the alarm for a minute?
Yeah, that one. Looks like they have a whole bowl. If you want to try it out. Alright, 1 jar down. How's the spice level on the tea? Is it too spicy? I was wondering how much to put in there.
That was good. It's kind of hot still, but it's kind of mild.
I can add.
no, I know, but she was beating you before, and then she got taken out of the group.
Do you want more powder?
Maybe.
It's kind of strong, so I didn't want to overdo it. Chunk. Come here. Oh yeah, he said that. He's very excited.
I'm going to split it with him. Or we can cut it up. Put it on a piece of paper. Oh yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.
What do you think?
I'll be right back
I have
with
a
you.
full
Michelle.
table. I like it. Very good.
It's a blessing.
Yeah, he said he's loving the honey for his No, I'm just letting you know that there's a microphone right there. So no, it's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that.
When you actually hear from the patient themselves, it's such a blessing. came back to Hard Rock, and she is now a total fan.
Good.
She now realizes that,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Awesome. That's great. Oh, and those coupons, I do not have an expiration, he said. So make sure to use it up.
Okay, so we're at your place, Billy. Okay,
Yeah.
Do I have to use it here?
Yeah. That's the deal. Ah, nice. Good afternoon. Tea time.
Afternoon tea
It's
time.
a good time of day for tea.
Exactly.
Feeling that mellow down.
And your friends, are they ready to go live?
Yep, she said she'll be on in just a few.
Okay, so what we'll do is, once you got her.
Cool.
Her name's Canna, correct?
Yeah, and I'm happy. I can introduce her if you want, or you can.
Then yeah,
Either way.
let me do it.
Um,
We'll basically plug you in.
and she's gonna tell a bit about herself too and her history. So she said it can be very casual.
Perfect, perfect.
So we'll do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear it. Oh, here.
Going.
Okay. Okay, it's down.
Hang on just a second. Hi. How's it going? I'm doing good, thanks. Yeah, I was just rearranging all my stuff. So are we going live right now or are we waiting till 5? Well, I'm on my computer, so that's a no. Sorry. I'm not sure that would, my light would fall off. Are you trying to get rid of the bright background? Do you want me to change anything in the backdrop or is it okay? Yes, I can. Let me just close my door here. Hold on a sec. Okay, I'm hopping on a few minutes early, so.
All right. Hello and good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Now? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Canna Honey CBD tea party at A Perfect Peace here in Newport. I'm excited to introduce to you Canna Champagne, who is a cannabis expert and wonderful nurse and full of knowledge, and here to give you a brief overview tonight of endocannabinoid system and CBD and talk to you about some really great stuff. And we will have time for question and answer at the end, so I just ask that you please hold your questions until we finish, and then we will make sure to get those to her. So, all right, Canna, welcome.
Hi, well, thank you for having me, Bree. So just quickly, can you see my PowerPoint screen okay?
I can see it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody could kind of follow along. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the Canna Honey Tea Party for sponsoring this education for you all today. I hope you're having a good time and enjoying your tea with CBD honey. So I'm here today to talk to you about the benefits of CBD. And so just to give you a little background on my experience in the cannabis industry. So I came into the cannabis industry initially as a cannabis patient who was seeking alternatives to opioids due to an extremely painful condition. It was basically an immune system collapse that occurred in 2012. I was very, very sick. I was also diagnosed autoimmune. And while I initially started cannabis just because I knew I didn't want to start down that opioid pathway, you know, as a nurse, you kind of see where that leads patients. And so was very motivated to avoid starting opioids for chronic pain. And the result of the cannabis was not only did it manage my pain, but it did some other things I didn't expect, like lifting my brain fog, which is, of course, the opposite of the stigma. It reduced my inflammation. It actually went on to reverse my autoimmune markers. So I am now negative for autoimmune, which of course is unheard of with the mainstream pharmaceutical approach. So this really got my attention as a nurse, like, wow, how does this plant do so many amazing things? So I began researching it, of course, found all the research and all the information, and, you know, of course, learning that it's just so safe, especially compared to a lot of the pharmaceutical options to manage chronic illness. So when my daughter with autism went into a puberty autism crisis a couple of years into my own recovery, this immediately came to mind as a potential answer for her. So as a special needs mom, of course, you know, we're very motivated to find what's safest, what's going to work the best for our kiddos. And she went on to have amazing health outcomes as well. Cannabis actually reduced her behaviors, which were extremely severe, to the tune of self-injury, to aggression towards others, to property destruction. She destroyed my house. And so when cannabis was able to ease that, it actually spared her out of home placement because there were a lot of safety issues that came with those behaviors. And in retrospect, what we did was treat for pain. My daughter was very limited verbal at the time, so couldn't really express, hey, I'm in pain. So her pain expression came out as behaviors. So those have subsided and have continued now 7 years later to be very manageable. So of course, as a patient, I'm very passion driven about cannabis and what it can do for patients. And this drove my desire to just follow patient needs in the cannabis industry. And that has led to fulfilling many roles in the cannabis industry. And so this is a good little overview. I am the founder of nonprofit Autism Safe Haven, which is focused on cannabis inclusive autism care resources and care homes, which are currently not existent and very badly needed. I've progressed into doing cannabis product development and helping producers, you know, make symptom targeted formula recipes, like Unity Formulas is one we'll talk about today, where some of the profits are actually donated to Autism Safe Haven. And also ensuring medical grade quality through Cannabis Nurse Approved program, which is another thing we'll touch on today. Very important, though, the quality of the product being utilized can literally make or break response. And so this is very important for patients. I've also progressed into, you know, after, you know, the last 6-7 years, I've been teaching patients, thousands of patients I've educated through integrated holistic care and known as a clinical application specialist. In the last couple of years, I pivoted to educating medical professionals about medical cannabis, and not only the theory, but also the practical application, how to actually, you know, take this research and apply it to individual patient situations. So I have accredited content that I teach through Cannabis Nurses Network. I'm also, as of this year, a college professor and just finished teaching my first cannabis curriculum to graduate student medical professionals at John Patrick University. And I'm also the vice president of clinical research and practitioner mentor at Holistic Caring. So now I'm mentoring other medical professionals to help them best serve their patients. So those are some of my roles that I'm fulfilling now. And so here's a nice little overview of our presentation today. And as Breeze said, please just hold your questions to the end and we'll have a chance to do some Q&A, and it just helps us kind of stay on time track. So I appreciate you doing that. And I believe there's a chat function if you're online virtually with us that you can do that as well. So we're going to talk about the endocannabinoid system. And if you haven't heard of this, this is a key subject to know about, to really understand how CBD works in our body. We're going to talk about different cannabidiol or CBD and cannabinoid sources. We're going to talk about cannabinoids and terpenes as well. So terpenes are very important. We're going to talk about endocannabinoid deficiency and what this means for our health. We're going to talk about different cannabinoids that are derived from what we call the hemp spectrum of cannabis. And really look how we can use these to target things like pain and focus and anxiety and sleep. Those tend to be kind of the most common symptoms that people are looking to alleviate with CBD. We're going to talk about how to source an optimal therapeutic quality product. And we're also going to send you off with some resources. And Breeze has a nice handout and some different discount codes as well. So stay tuned. So here's just a 101 overview of our endocannabinoid system, a big word. So this is the 12th system in our body. We discovered it in 1992. And what we discovered is that this system actually oversees or maintains homeostasis throughout our body. So it's very, very important, especially when you consider that the underlying cause of any damage to human health. These actually interact with the receptors of the endocannabinoid system in a way that promotes homeostasis or balance. And the endocannabinoid system is actually argued as necessary for life. These endocannabinoids that it produces are so vital that the most prolific source is human breast milk. And we used to have, cannabinoids in our diet more prolifically, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And so we've established it produces endocannabinoids. The endocannabinoid system also, when it's activated, will help to mitigate the stress response and promote the restorative phase of healing, which is, we call it our eat, relax, forget, sleep, protect response. And this was, of course, from DeMarso, one of the early cannabis science pioneers. And so we've learned enough to know that the receptor activation by cannabinoids, can really help to promote balance. And we have, really prolific CB1 receptors in our brain and nervous system, and what we call CB2 receptors, which are found in our immune system and peripheral organs and our gut as well. And so there's all these different areas. It's very widespread. It reaches throughout the body, and it can be likened to the endocrine system, in that it produces substances, but it also has receptors that receive those substances and use it to kind of tweak what our body is doing and how we're responding. So very, very important. And so there's another cannabinoid source as well. We've got our endocannabinoids we just talked about that are produced inside our bodies. The precursors to these are omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. This is significant because, of course, our society at large is very deficient in these fatty acids. And so it's going to be really hard for some people to be able to produce enough endocannabinoids to remain in a state of homeostasis or balance, which is, of course, what we consider to be very optimal. So when somebody can't produce enough endocannabinoids, which can be various reasons, including the omega deficiency, we can actually supplement with cannabinoids from the cannabis plant. It's called the cannabis sativa L, and it produces many phytocannabinoids, we call them, over 165 that we know of so far. And of course, thanks to prohibition of almost 100 years, we're learning more about this plant every day, and our research really is still very lacking, but this is what we know so far. There are also mycocannabinoids that are produced by some fungal plants. So that's another potential plant source. And interestingly, when we look at the chemical structure of the phytocannabinoids that come from plant life versus the endocannabinoids that our bodies produce, they are very, very similar. And you can see over here on the right, we've got a little graph of THC, which is one of the phytocannabinoids from the cannabis plant. This is the one that's the most controversial. And anandamide is an endocannabinoid we produce. And they're very similar in structure, and they are exact in function. The body really doesn't differentiate between an endocannabinoid we produce or a phytocannabinoid from the plant. Same thing with CBD or cannabidiol, and 2-AG, which is our internal endocannabinoid that works the same way. And so when you think about this, of course, it is a little suspect that here we have this system. It maintains balance in our body. It helps to maintain our health. And one of those substances is actually a Schedule I place by the federal government. It's, there's not a lot of logic to this. It's a lot of stigma that really doesn't fit. So just a good thing to remember that we produce something that looks just like THC. And so endocannabinoid deficiency is a condition that was coined by Dr. Ethan Russo. He's another one of our cannabis doctor pioneers. And he found that endocannabinoid deficiency is a condition found in all chronic illness. So if somebody's chronically ill, we can predict that they also have endocannabinoid system deficiency. So they don't have enough endocannabinoids to keep their body in balance. And of course, endocannabinoid deficiency is going to result in systemic imbalances, which is the underlying cause of chronic illness. So it really very logical, makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of different causes of endocannabinoid deficiency. There are genetic causes, meaning somebody might have a mutation that means they can't make enough endocannabinoids, or their body can't utilize them correctly. There's an endocannabinoid system receptor mutation genetically that is linked with autism, for example. Environmental, are we getting enough omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids in our body so that our endocannabinoid system can produce what we need? And chronic illness is another thing that can cause endocannabinoid deficiency. Basically when you're sick, it can deplete your levels of endocannabinoids and your body can't keep up. And then, on the flip side, endocannabinoid deficiency causes chronic illness. So this can become kind of like a downward spiral for patients that are sick. And so this kind of explains why addressing endocannabinoid deficiency with phytocannabinoid supplementation, like from CBD, can help to improve so many different conditions. And you'll see I have a number of them listed here. All of these are conditions that are supported by research that is statistically valid and strong, and patient outcomes as well, that CBD or cannabis could improve all of these conditions. And you see, it's, there's really a lot of different areas. There's multiple sclerosis or autoimmune, there's cancer, there's autism, there's chronic Lyme, chronic pain syndromes, diabetes, mental health, neurological, just all over the gamut, skeletal system issues. And just remember the reason for this, and I get this question from a lot of medical professionals, like, well, how can cannabis be good for everything? It must be snake oil. Well, no, when you understand that the underlying cause of every one of these conditions is imbalances that are ongoing, and the body can't get back to a state of homeostasis. And then you realize that phytocannabinoid or cannabis or CBD supplementation from the plant can actually fill this deficiency that's underlying all of these conditions. That kind of helps it to make sense, because a doctor will see this and go, wait a minute, these are in all different systems of the body. How does that make sense? They're used to pharmaceuticals where there's one target and one system and that's it. So it's a very different paradigm. But in my teaching of medical professionals, once that light turns on, boy, they are passionate, especially when they start seeing patient outcomes. So if anybody in the audience if any of you have had positive outcomes of CBD or cannabis, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to share them with your primary care physician if you're comfortable doing that, or with whatever medical professional is assisting you, because this is really, what tends to kind of open their eyes and make them more curious is, how can this plant do all of these things? So patient stories are so empowering. And so I want to talk a little bit about the different phytocannabinoids we find in the hemp plant. I'm just gonna clarify again that hemp is a term that we humans have placed on a parameter of 0.3% THC or less. Whether it qualifies as hemp or it doesn't qualify as hemp because it's more than 0.3% THC, it's all coming from the same plant, the same genus, the same species. It's Cannabis sativa L. So we're really the ones kind of splitting that out. But the ones that are approved under the Hemp Act of 2018 federally include CBD or cannabidiol. And of course, we're here today thanks to Canna honey, which is CBD infused in honey, which is a very powerful combination. Cannabidiol is great because it's not intoxicating. And so, people a lot of times people are worried when they hear cannabis, they think, oh, I don't want to be intoxicated. I don't want to impair my function. And so there are daily concerns about that with CBD. CBD, of course, is multi-use, many, many, many possible benefits for a variety of conditions. And it has the most research supporting it because it's not, federally regulated as heavily as other compounds from the plant. And so it has the longest list of indications as well, including infections, pain, anxiety. It's immune modulating. I actually have to move my picture. There we go. It can help with depression. It acts kind of like the SSRIs. We have research supporting it as anxiolytic. So I've actually seen it reduce reliance on things like benzodiazepines or anxiolytic medications like Xanax. For pain as well, it interacts with a pathway that actually reduces our body's sensation of pain called the TRPV1 pathway. Infections, we have research supporting that CBD can kill MRSA. Powerful. And I saw a patient of mine that cleared up a Marcon's infection in 6 weeks that she had been suffering with for years. So it really can help with modulating the immune system and helping to target infections. Diabetes and obesity, we have research that supports that CBD can help to manage blood sugar. It can help to manage your appetite. And cancer, I have many cancer patients I've worked with, and I've seen some pretty amazing things, including people that were on hospice and stage 4 and facing death that actually graduated hospice, and 6-7 years later, they're still alive and well using CBD. And what we have found out in the science to explain this, so this is the thing, like a lot of times it's the patient outcomes that say, oh, hey, look at this as a funny outcome. We should actually research this and try to figure out the why. So a lot of times these patient stories are what make us realize we need to research something. And what we found with CBD and cancer is that it blocks a pathway called GPR55 that actually is required by the cancer cells to grow and spread. And so this is why even just CBD alone can be so powerful in the fight for cancer recovery. Epilepsy, I mean, this is one of the main reasons we see CBD used. And of course, pharmaceuticals have picked up on this, and the main pharmaceuticals using CBD isolate are for epilepsy or seizure disorders. Psychosis, CBD can help to balance out some of the neurotransmitters that have gone askew in schizophrenia. Asthma, it has very potent anti-inflammatory effects. And osteoporosis, we have research supporting that CBD can help to reduce the breakdown of bones as we age and actually help to reverse, that issue, which it doesn't seem like too big of a deal, but really for those that are aging, keeping their bones strong can really, improve their quality of life. In a fall can change somebody's quality of life immediately. And so keeping our bones strong means if somebody falls, they're less likely to get a break and change their quality of life so drastically. I was an ortho nurse, so I remember that from my hospital days. We also have cannabigerol, which is another phytocannabinoid. This one is a little bit newer on the market. It is not intoxicating either. It is very stimulating. It has multiple uses, including things like inflammation. It's a CB2 agonist, so it's great for immune system issues or gut issues or neuro support. And it's just become a beautiful tool to have to really help better target some of those conditions. We have CBDA, which is the raw form of CBD, also not intoxicating. And it is a very powerful anti-inflammatory and also shown to be good for things like seizures and breast cancer and nausea, or some of the research studies that have come out. We also have CBN, which is, it is pretty intoxicating. It's still allowed under the Hemp Act, even though it's a degradation of THC as far as chemically how it is produced. And its indications include things like sleep support and pain and stress support. CBN is responsible for my daughter sleeping consistently for the first time in her life at age 19. And we've been using it about 6 months. So highly recommend if you're having some sleep issues, CBN could be a good answer for you. So in addition to talking about all of those cannabinoids we just reviewed, I also want to talk to you about cannabis terpenes. Terpenes are very important. You can basically think of them as the essential oils that the cannabis plant produces. And we know of 200 so far or more. They really provide a synergistic effect along with the cannabinoids like CBD or CBG or CBDA or CBN, meaning that they really amplify the effect of those cannabinoids. They also really determine whether a certain product is going to be more stimulating or more sedative. So it's really important that if you're purchasing a product, that you kind of know what you're after and you know which strains to seek and which ones to kind of avoid. And you may have heard the terms indica or sativa, and these are used to basically describe the terpene profile and which terpenes or essential oils are most prolific in that specific strain. Or and this, for indica strains, you're going to see more of a calming or a sedative effect. With sativa strains, which are going to be, dominant in the more energizing terpenes, those are going to be energizing and uplifting. And then we have hybrids, which are more of a balance of the stimulating and sedative terpenes, and those tend to be more neutral in effect for people. Common terpenes that we find in the cannabis sativa L plant include myrcene. The research supports that it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. It can help the cannabinoids cross more easily as well. So this is a great terpene to look for anything neurological, any neurological issue. It's also very anti-inflammatory. It has anti-seizure properties in its own right. So obviously myrcene is a great answer for seizure disorders or epilepsy. Myrcene can be sedative in high concentrations. So we do want to watch that and make sure that you understand that, if it has a good amount of myrcene, it could be sedative for you. Beta-caryophyllene is another one that's it's exceedingly common in cannabis. Beta-caryophyllene is special because it actually acts like a cannabinoid in some ways. It'll activate our CB2 receptor. Otherwise, what the research supports is that it has a lot of antibacterial properties and anti-inflammatory properties. More recently, we've learned that it can act like a beta blocker. So this would be a great one to seek if you have high blood pressure and you're looking to reduce your reliance on blood pressure medications, for example. Linalool is another favorite of mine. Linalool is also found in lavender, myrcene in mangoes, beta-caryophyllene, and things like clove and pepper, just for reference. Linalool, lavender, very sedative, just like lavender, can reduce anxiety, and also has anti-seizure properties in its own right. That's another good one to seek if you have seizure disorders. Limonene is another very common one. This one is known for elevating mood, for energizing, for motivating. It also has some anti-cancer properties. And then pinene, which is from pine trees, it can be also very energizing. It can help with things like focus, and it has some anti-inflammatory effects. So it's, as you can see, depending on the terpenes that are in your cannabis product, you could have a variety of different effects. And this is why it's so important to make sure, say you're looking for something for sleep, you probably want to stay away from products that are really dominant in things like limonene and pinene, because they're apt to actually keep you awake. And so this is where making sure the product you're getting is appropriate for your goals can literally make or break your response. So in addition to considering the profile of the product that you're taking, there can be other medical considerations you want to have assessed by a medical professional that understands cannabis. There's a lot of individual considerations, including what are your priorities and goals for the cannabis therapy. We talked about how different strain profiles may or may not be appropriate depending on what you're after. Pharmaceutical interactions, this is probably the biggest consideration of CBD or cannabis therapy. With CBD specifically, if you're taking a medication and you've been told to avoid grapefruit, you should most definitely have your pharmaceuticals assessed before taking CBD, because there can be interactions. The CBD can actually alter how your medication works in your body. So this is very important. And usually just kind of spacing it a couple hours away is ample to reduce this interaction, but that really depends on the medication. So you should have a pharmacist or a doctor or a nurse look at those meds and just make sure. Best case scenario, you might just negate the benefit of the CBD. Worst case scenario, you could actually start to have some side effects of your medications that pop up randomly out of the blue. So definitely worth looking into. There's different health and genetic factors that can be looked at to help match you up with the right type of cannabis for you. Condition and lifespan concerns. So we want to make sure we really understand what the research supports for the condition of every customer using CBD or cannabis. And for lifespan concerns, that's more around, the THC. We want to make sure if a child has been recommended THC by their physician that, we've done an assessment to make sure that those risk factors are mitigated as much as possible, because there can be some concerns there with pediatric use. Strain-specific implications, of course, we talked about this quite a bit already, making sure that if you want it for sleep, that it's sedative. If you want it for energy, that it's stimulating. Contraindications, there aren't very many contraindications. One that comes to mind is, we tend to not recommend THC for use with schizophrenia. And that's the main one. We're cautious with pediatrics and THC as well. There can be other condition specific areas where we have some knowledge that would say, okay, for this condition, we're going to use this and not use that type of thing. And then there's cannabis allergy, which is exceedingly rare. I have seen it once where somebody actually, came out with a rash. So 1 out of thousands of patients, very, very rare, very unusual. And we do have, targeted education on my website, Integrated Holistic Care, under the FAQ section. There's a self-questionnaire there that kind of helps to guide you whether or not you should be assessed by a medical professional before trying cannabis therapy. So that's a nice little resource for you there. So when we're talking about using products that are really targeted, this is the reason we do so. And this is the reason why I've helped to produce the Unity Formulas line. I'm one of the formulators, and I'm responsible for providing the research that supports the ingredients in these formulations for the specific targets. For Canna honey, which, by the way, I have in my tea every single day and I love it, I find a big difference if I miss it in my allergy severity. And so CBD honey is great for reducing allergies. And it has some other, great honey compounds in there too for your immune system. So I wouldn't be without it. And Unity Formulas is another great answer if you're having pain. The ingredients in these two products are supported by research as anti-inflammatory, as reducing pain. For neuropathic pain support, especially the night blend is good for that. For COX-2 inhibition, which is another inflammatory pathway that can contribute to pain response. It's also immune modulating. So for something like rheumatoid arthritis, you would be getting the pain targeting, but also helping to kind of balance the immune system that's overactive and attacking the joints, as we see in rheumatoid arthritis. So reasonable goals for these products, which, very targeted formulas, are that you might see a reduction in your pharmaceutical reliance. I have patients who I have educated who were successful with their doctor's oversight or pharmacist oversight in weaning completely off of their opioids. And some of them were very high dose opioids. And so this is where the targeted formula can really make a big difference, because if you go and get a formula that's great for improving your mood, but not really great for hitting those pain pathways we're after, you're probably not going to get a big reduction in your pain. And this kind of explains why, it's really rampant that customers will purchase CBD and just kind of guess picking one off the shelf, and they don't get the responses they want. And so they stop taking it and assume that CBD doesn't work for them. When realistically, if they had found a targeted formula and a really optimal blend, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, we want to make sure it's therapeutic quality, then we see much higher responses in consumers who are actually meeting their goals and have success with CBD. And so that's really our goal with Unity Formulas. And so, of course, holistic approach is always optimal. So with pain, we want to be talking about stress management strategies. If you're stressed out, your body's going to be really tense. And if you're tense, your areas of pain are going to be worse. So stress management can be huge. There can be other complementary interventions as well. Things like massage or chiropractic or acupuncture can also really help with pain. And so we never say, cannabis or CBD alone is the answer. We say, let's look at what you can do throughout your lifestyle to really try to improve your symptoms. So here's another product we have through Unity Formulas. This is our Focused Energy Tincture, and it has CBD and CBG in it. And the ingredients are supplying brain inflammation. So we want to target that with a product, and that's what Focused Energy does. It's very analgesic, so it can also be good for pain. It's got that COX-2 inhibition, so it can reduce inflammation and multiple pathways. We're actually marketing this as an exercise and performance enhancement. So really encouraging people to try this before exercise to see if it helps boost their performance, which a marathon a marathon runner friend of mine has sampled this out for us, and she loves it. She's seeing her times improve. So we know that it can really help, improve stamina. It can help, reduce the inflammation from exercise and give people a little bit of an edge that way. This is also a product that we've seen great success with things like ADD and ADHD. It is pretty stimulating. That's why we call it energy. And for those with ADD, ADHD that are responsive to stimulant pharmaceuticals like Ritalin or Adderall, this can be something that can help kind of reduce their reliance on those with, physician oversight, of course. So reasonable goals include reduction in pharmaceutical reliance. And of course, looking at other interventions that could be instituted is also important for this. Here we have a CBD product, Unity Formulas for anxiety support. And the ingredients, the cannabinoids and terpenes both in this product are supported by research for being anxiolytic, so reducing anxiety, also increasing serotonin, which, SSRIs, which also increase serotonin, are often prescribed for those with anxiety, so that it can help to replace some of those medications if that's the desire. It can be stress relieving, and it also can help to balance neurotransmitters, which can be underlying in anxiety. Usually it's a GABA glutamate imbalance that causes that. And so reasonable goals with this product include reduction in pharmaceutical reliance, and of course the pharmaceutical things like benzodiazepines and other anxiolytics often come with pretty horrific side effects, where CBD tends to be very low, if any, side effects, much higher safety profile than things like benzodiazepines, which are also known to be very addictive. So this can be a great alternative for people. Once again, we want to be looking at stress management, meditation, how to reduce the other contributors to anxiety as well for the most optimal outcomes. And that was really integral in my work with patients, which is why you keep seeing that pop up. And then cannabinoids for sleep. In our sleep formula for Unity, we have CBDA and a little bit of CBD combined with CBN. And CBN is, if you remember from a few slides back, that's the compound that has been known to be very sedative from the hemp profile. And, this is the product that has my daughter sleeping consistently, which is just a miracle. It's also known to be very anxiolytic and reduce stress, which of course can be part of what keeps people from sleeping. It can increase serotonin, which can help with the sleep and the circadian rhythm. Serotonin and melatonin are very closely linked. And then the CBN itself is supported by research for being sedative and helping people with insomnia. Reasonable goals for this product include reduction in pharmaceuticals that are prescribed to help sleep, or for those with insomnia, things like Ambien and, oh gosh, there's some really awful ones. Klonopin is another one, which, they come with horrific side effects. People are sleepwalking and doing all kinds of crazy stuff on these medications, not to mention the side effects. And so this might be a better answer if you're suffering side effects of medications for insomnia. Of course, sleep hygiene is another important piece, along with stress management and other complementary interventions. If there's been trauma, for example, you probably want to seek therapy, because that could be part of what's impairing your sleep. So yeah, these are a great addendum to anybody that's seeking improved health, and really promotion of balance in the body. And so, one of the highlights of Unity formulas and also of CBD honey is that they meet these research-supported standards for optimal therapeutic quality. And we call it the flow criteria. My nurses and I came up with this very organically as we were teaching patients. Sometimes we would have patients call us and they had already spent a whole bunch of money on a product. And depending on, the specifics about that product, is it flower derived? Is it lab tested? Is it organic? Is it whole plant? Sometimes you would have to say, I'm really sorry, but I don't think that product is going to meet your goals, best case scenario. Say it's homemade from the neighbor, lab tested, they don't even know the strain. Then it's like, well, we don't even know if that's safe. We don't know if it could be contaminated with something. It could have mold. So, this is very, very important to make sure that your product is meeting the flow criteria. It certainly contributes to the barriers of CBD success in our population, which is a dismal 3%. And, part of the reason for that is that there's only about 10 to 15% of cannabis producers that meet this criteria. And then, of course, even beyond that, if it's not correctly targeted, that could also be a barrier to success. The third one I would add to this list that, by the way, we target through Unity Formulas. We have a free nurse line anybody can schedule and talk with the nurse, is looking at the pharmaceutical interactions. So those are really the three main reasons people are not successful with CBD. So the research supporting flow includes, that there's been studies comparing the whole plant aspect. Whole plant meaning that flower that contains more than 500 compounds is being concentrated as nature intended. And what research supports is unfortunately, a lot of the products that are sold today, they strip away most of those 500 compounds. For example, isolate is one compound. CO2 extraction usually nets a dozen to a couple of dozen compounds. So really taking out a lot of the antioxidants, the bioflavonoids, the essential fatty acids, which are all providing this synergy. It's very much, if you're into psychology, like Gestalt theory, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Realizing we know some of nature in this plant that has evolved with us for thousands of years. It's kind of comical almost in some ways. But really what the research supports is what I've seen in patients as well, using, products like CO2. They would call me and say, it worked for a while and then it stopped working. Well, why is that? Well, here we have our answer. Isolate, or CO2, which is not much better than isolate, exerts a bell curve in the body. So as you're taking your dose and you're increasing your dose, it'll peak, fall off, and stop working. Well, there's the answer. Why do you need so much more of the isolate or the CO2 to get the same response? Because according to the research, whole plant is effective, as effective or more effective at 20 to 25% of the isolate dosage. So really, when you find whole plant products, you're going to reduce your cost of the product as well, which of course is so important for patients that are sick and, oftentimes paying out of pocket for medical treatment. So this is a real advantage for patients. And so here are our CBD success solutions. We have cannabisnurseapproved.com, which can be a resource, and it has, the article I wrote explaining the flow criteria with all of the research citations supported. And we also have unityformulas.com, which meet the flow criteria. We have a free CBD nurse hotline, and we have targeted blends for things like pain, daytime or nighttime, anxiety, depression, for focus and energy, and for sleep. And we also do some custom blends. And we're just about to launch a practitioner package as well. So you could actually, if you have a medical professional you'd like to introduce this to, we have resources you can take to them. We'll have a phone line they can call anytime to talk with a nurse or other medical professional to kind of explain some of this stuff to them. The downside for medical professionals is that we don't learn about the endocannabinoid system in medical school or nursing school, still to this day. It's very rare to find a school that's teaching cannabis curriculum. And so we need to be open to educating them. And that's part of our mission, is to help medical professionals better understand all of this, because then we can reach even more patients and help them be successful. Unity Formulas, these are products with purpose. 15% of sales are donated to Autism Safe Haven as well. And I believe Canna Honey is going to be offered on our Unity website very shortly as well. So highly encourage trying that. And so I'm ready for questions. I do want to throw out, we have a 20% off coupon for Unity Formulas if that appeals to you. And so make sure you write that down in our website, unityformulas.com. And there's a link on there to book a consult if you'd like to talk to our CBD nurse hotline. That's Nurse Betty, who is fantastic. She's one of the nurses I've mentored in this industry. So very knowledgeable and very kind. So I'm ready to take questions if we have any.
And feel free to step up to the mic. You can ask any questions. I guess I'll go first. Hi, great. I love love it. It's great. So I got a question. So, we're already seeing trends like pharmaceutical companies are losing like $200 million a year to cannabis sales right now. And that trend's only going to keep going up, which we absolutely love. Do you have any concerns about, the separation of the compounds and pharmaceutical companies, locking those compounds down, whereas the whole plant, can't be patented or trademarked?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason they're doing it. And, as a medical professional, this is part of what I appeal to other medical professionals as I'm teaching them, is that, we need to remember what has already happened and how we've ended up in this medical system that is so horrifically broken. And it's because of, in part, to pharmaceuticals and their treatment of our natural remedies and splitting them apart and pulling out one compound. It works differently in the body than the whole plant. And this is especially true with cannabis. And I'll flip back to my flow criteria here. And whole plant is probably the most important and hardest to find on this list. And what we know is that when we concentrate that whole plant, it's going to work better at 20 to 25% of the dose of isolate and have a more consistent response. And what CBD has done with their products like Epidiolex, they're using isolate CBD. It's indicated for seizures. It has a price tag of $32,000 a year to start. Not to mention that it has additives like sucralose that can actually trigger seizures in people. I mean, there's just not a lot of logic to what they've done to CBD for seizures. When we know that a whole plant product that is targeted for seizures would probably cost out of pocket about $1,200 to $1,500 a year. And it's going to work at 20 to 25% of the dose, and it's not going to have this bell curve response we see with isolates. So this is all research supported. You can see my citations are there. There is an article I wrote. It published in Whole Plant CBD for the CBD Health and Wellness magazine called Whole Plant CBD for the Win. It published in October of 2020. In that, and in that article, I expand on the flow criteria to even talk about how the isolated forms or the nanodized forms or the liposomal forms. I mean, people are doing all kinds of crazy stuff with isolate CBD. They work so much differently than whole plant that we can't even translate the unsurpassed safety profile of cannabis to those products. So I have many, many, many concerns about what pharmaceuticals are doing with CBD. And, as a patient advocate, as a nurse that has never benefited from the sales of any cannabis product, I'm objective and I say skip the pharma and go for whole plant products. Even something that your neighbor has made, that's what they're doing.
Thank you. That was great.
Was that the answer you wanted?
That was perfect. I'm down with seeing pharmaceutical companies go down. We got this plant, we've, harvested. I mean, we don't have the research just because, when the DEA, separated cannabis and hemp and made up marijuana, a made up word, it made it so they couldn't do any research. And so it's beauty to, we pretty much had a pause in the 50s, and now, in 2014, more research just, skyrocketed. And within a couple years, we started getting, live rosins and all kinds of crazy, beautiful things. So it's going to be really amazing to see what happens in the future.
Well, yeah. And, those products are great for recreational use. CO2 CBD, somebody might just have really superficial use. They don't like the taste of the whole plant. If they may not be seeking deeper health goals, there are appropriate uses for isolate and CO2. But I'm a believer in educating and helping people make the right decision for them and having informed decision-making, informed consent, really understanding the difference and understanding whether that is going to help them meet their goal. That's really what it comes down to. So you'll love that article. I'm kind of in a my paradigm now is that we really need to separate the whole plant products, the whole plant, the ability to grow the plant, the ability to process it, the ability to utilize it, and all the whole plant products should be basic human right for everybody. But these products that we're isolating and nanodizing and liposomal, because we don't have the same unsurpassed safety profile, why don't we let them keep those for pharmaceuticals and have that be Schedule 1 and free the plant? So that's my new thing. That's my new soapbox that I'm on.
All right, I think we got another question.
Sure.
Hi. I'm looking for a cannabis nurse. And I actually found you online, but I understand you don't do regular patient because you're teaching the teachers. Good for you, teaching all the medical professionals. Yeah. Who would you recommend? Do you have a list? What's my next step?
You can schedule on our free nurse line, and we do outsource to holistic caring, and they have nurse consults available there. Oftentimes, we're able to help you on the free nurse line, and then you don't have to pay out of pocket for that if you don't want to. If you have a more complex condition, we can tell you which nurse over there, specializes in that area and really give you some guidance that way as well.
start with the 15-minute thing. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, and I'm not seeing new patients at this time. I'm unfortunately in November of 2019, the state of Oregon, and I am an Oregon licensed nurse, decided that that nurses in this industry should not be educating patients. And so it shut down my patient consulting business, and all 3 of my nurses I had trained quit because they needed their licenses. So it's you know, and I'm of course very out there, very outspoken, very visible. And so, you know, that's the reason I'm not seeing patients still. I'm hoping to again someday, but for now, I'm just teaching the medical professionals and reaching more patients that way. So
I have a question for you. I've been using full spectrum plant-based products, Ray Simpson oils, and stuff all my life. So I was born with a bunch of birth defects. So is that Unity tincture made with full plant too?
so when I hear full spectrum, I always want to investigate a little deeper. There's really no regulation of the marketing terms that are used in the cannabis industry at all, which drives me crazy. You know, how CO2, which is removed most of the compounds and maybe a dozen left, is calling itself full spectrum. Like, it's deceptive marketing, and it takes patients for a ride that really need a different product and don't realize it. So sometimes full spectrum is used to describe whole plant. What I really look for is products that are ethanol extracted. Now, all the ethanol is removed and purged during the process, and we have labs to prove it. There's no ethanol left in it, but that concentrates the flower as nature intended the most effectively. I think butane is a close second. The other products that we recommend are those that are like the raw infusions or even decarbed flour that's been infused. That will also pull, you know, what we would consider a whole plant spectrum product.
I tried that Canna honey like 2 weeks ago, and it was probably some of the best that I've ever tried in the full spectrum industry, because I use a lot of that because I have a lot of underlying issues. You know, so is that Unity follow along the same lines as the Unity tinctures follow along the same lines as the Canna honey?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, so Canna. Yes, I love my Canna honey, and both of us use, you know, the base product that we use is called full extract cannabis oil. It's ethanol extracted, all the ethanol is purged, and then that's added. In our case, for the tinctures, it's added to the base oil. In Canna honey, they add it to their raw honey that has all that nectar of the god profile in it. It's just amazing. So yeah, I'm glad to hear you're having such good results.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, looks like we got a question from Patty Dukes. What? Yeah, I lost it.
Uh-oh.
What are terpenes the smell of cannabis?
Yes, terpenes are what provide the smell of cannabis. So depending on the terpenes in there, you probably know, since sounds like you're familiar with the smell of cannabis, but it can make it more woody or more earthy, or it can make it, smell more like citrus. I had a wonderful plant that I grew many years back. I grew for myself and my daughter, and when it was in flower, it actually smelled like orange juice, and it was really high in limonene. So it definitely contributes to that. There's the berry smells. With over 200 terpenes, this also explains how we have almost unlimited mixing and matching, and can have such a variety of different scents in our strains. Just remember too that those terpenes, in addition to providing the smell, can be providing some other therapeutic benefits as well. As we know, essential oils are very medicinal, and we have many companies that capitalize on that. So it can also help you to really target your specific goals by getting the right terpene profile.
Question with that. So can you help me out? What's the spicy smelling one that's good for anti-inflammatory?
Oh, beta-caryophyllene. And here I can go back up and we can review our terpene page. Let me find it here. Oh my goodness, I missed it. Here it is. Yep, there we go. So beta-caryophyllene. Beta-caryophyllene, in addition to being anti-inflammatory, it's found in cloves and pepper. It also is a CB2 agonist, which can translate to potential benefits for the immune system and also the gastrointestinal system, because we have a lot of CB2 receptors in those two departments. And so that can really be a good way to target issues stemming from those imbalances.
Nice. You know, and I love my floral smelling and my lime smelling and my pine smelling. Those are my favorites.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, my orange one, I named it Tang. It came to me as a cross a friend had accidentally bred. It was like Canna times Luminaria. And man, loved how it smelled. Made my whole room smell like orange juice when it was in flower. And that was like my favorite house cleaning strain. It was very energizing, very motivating, very euphoric. It almost made house cleaning fun. It was, it's really great. Great when you're using it, for the specific effect you're after and it matches up. It can be a really good experience. So.
Okay, so I'm driving here today. My wife, we were talking about if I was going to share this story or not, and I said I don't know, how comfortable I would be, but I have severe back pain when I sleep, and usually at 4 a.m. or something like that, I'll usually have to get up and I just can't lay down anymore, so I get in the bathtub and spend 2 hours in the bathtub. Fine, I could do my day, But I had this about half-hour leave, but I can't fall asleep that way. I can only go on my side. So I was laying there going, okay.
I'm getting to the point where you're going to bypass that bell curve with your CO2, and you have it as a tool when you need it. Another thing for pain that I love are topicals, especially things like back pain where it's more superficial. I have a lot of hip and shoulder pain, and topicals, I keep a little jar of pain lotion on my nightstand. And if I wake up in pain, I'll grab a little bit, put it on and go back to sleep. So that's another great tool. And we do have some topicals on Unity formulas as well. But, for back pain, I would maybe go with the fire, like the heating. And we also have a cooling one called ice. So lots of options. Yeah, it's on Unity Formula's website. Hey, you're welcome. Of course.
I have been selling slit, and some of it is whole plant extraction. What do you recommend? I have a person who has seizures disorder. He's an adult-ish. He's I think he just graduated from high school, so now he's officially an adult. He's 19 or 20 now. But he's been using the isolate product for me, and he's been seizure-free for that 5 years that he's been using the product that I've been selling him. So I know that it's still working for him, and he's not having to increase his dose and whatnot. When we had him on the full plant extraction, there's problems. He can't take enough product because of the tincture and the oil. So he can't use a whole bottle of tincture every day and get the levels of CBD that he needs to control his seizures. And then the other issue is if I do capsules that have a higher dose in the capsule, then the capsules themselves have polysorbate in them through isolate.
Yeah. Well, and if that's working for him, what I would question, of course, he's got some very specific individual issues that are, contributing to this as well. When I see seizure patients switch from an isolate to a whole plant and, assuming they tolerate it, some people don't tolerate chlorophyll, so they do better on CO2. Some people have to worry about drug testing. So that's where isolate or broad spectrum, where they've removed the THC, might be the better option. So we're always kind of looking at the individual situation and weighing it. But what I've realized when I switch patients from an isolate to a whole plant for seizures is that they're much more consistent in reducing their reliance on the pharmaceuticals. So that's where I see it being, a much better option, especially if they're suffering, the AEDs, the anti-epileptic drugs, the
I'd be really
the side effects can be very quality of life disrupting. So
really interested in product that had a high enough level of CBD in a tincture that would be not so much oil. But then the other issue is he's autistic as well, and so it's really hard to get him to change his motion to do anything. And a capsule that's an isolate that has absolutely zero flavor and zero whatever is much easier to get an autistic person to take than something that has a flavor.
Yeah. Well, and autism is another one of my specialties. Obviously, I have a 19-year-old daughter with autism, and we've used cannabis extensively with her, and I've worked with many, many autism and seizure patients, both. Unity has got 5 different products that are targeting neuro. We have products that are combining that myrcene and linalool, which we know, that's going to add to the anti-seizure benefits of the CBD already. And we also do a lot of custom blending. So, something like seizures, we will work with somebody if our baseline products aren't meeting their needs. We'll continue to tweak it further and try to help them find what does work. We can do custom potencies. If it ends up he needs higher potency, I would expect that he would need lower potency in a whole plant spectrum product that is targeted for seizures. According to the research, 20 to 25% of the dose of isolate, and that's I believe that's the Galilee. You're welcome to look up that, the article that's cited there, and you can read that. And it was specific to seizures that research was. So it really does. But there's always, individual factors. So, yeah, there's always individual factors. This is very general information, but, say he can't have the chlorophyll, he can't have the polysorbate in the capsule. It's just about finding what's going to work best for him. What's the best answer, and that can look different depending on an individual situation. So,
all right.
Hopefully that was helpful.
Got another question from an online guy. What is full spectrum?
Full spectrum is a very unclear marketing term that is used by cannabis producers. Sometimes it reflects that their extraction process is really optimal if it's things like ethanol extraction or infusion. Sometimes full spectrum is used by CO2 companies that have a fraction of the compounds in their product that you would get from whole plant spectrum. And so when I hear full spectrum, I want to investigate further. I want to find out exactly how they're extracting. I want to make sure that it's meeting the flow criteria here, especially if there are serious therapeutic goals for that cannabis use.
It's nice. You said you had a daughter that was 19 that has autism. Well, my son, he's just turned 20, and he has Asperger's really bad. So at night, he has super high focus Asperger's. So he has a hard time like calming down and going to sleep and stuff like that. And I wanted to start introducing him to maybe some CBD in or somewhere along those lines, because I use that myself as well. But I didn't know if there was like something that can help him in the daytime too, to where I don't want him to feel like he's gonna pass out, or you know what I mean? Because everybody's affected different from the different CBDs and CBD-ins and stuff. But what would be a good starting point maybe for him to calm down that hyper focus? You know what I mean?
The kids with autism are so individual themselves. One kid with autism, one kid. And so the process that I used to take clients through was, just targeting what are the specific goals for this patient. Because it can be anxiety, it can be behaviors, it can be, the hyper focus, it can be sensory, it can be speech, there can be so many different things.
Hyper focused, basically.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He'll be sitting up at night just on the computer because he can't sleep, and I'm out and I'm trying to sleep, and he's like, Dad, I need to try to start doing some of that medicine that you use to try to use that. So I'll get a hold of your nurses there, and maybe I'll have him contact one of them, because he's old enough now he can talk and do for himself too. But
yeah. I mean, you might try the CBN, and I pulled the product back up on the screen there. Our Sleep Calm, it's CBDA plus CBN. If he needs daytime support, I wouldn't use this during the day. It's going to make him really sleepy. But for daytime support, a lot of times with autism, they do well with the anxiety formula. It just kind of helps to calm the brain down a little bit. That's probably our mildest sedative, that provides that.
Sensory, the loud noise, like if the motorcycle goes by or something, he throws his hands over his ears, and he's like, cause
yeah.
Trying to help him out with that. He's been complaining about it a lot lately, so it's
yeah.
kind of came to mind. I was like, oh yeah,
yes,
Christopher,
yes.
I gotta remember him.
Yes, and yeah, for daytime sensory, we have an intermediate product that's also neuro-targeted called NeuroCalm. And it actually has just a tiny bit of CBN in it, which of course acts like the THC, which is probably the best thing for sensory overload for calming that. So you could try the Neural Calm, and, or even consider, I know if you're in Oregon, he's going to need to see a doctor and get an OMMP card, but THC can be a great daytime answer for that as well. So, and these kids with autism, autism is endocannabinoid deficiency. I have a whole hour that I just recorded on.
Right.
So,
Autism Society here in Oregon.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Well, good. Yeah, it's, I had one client with autism that was taking 200 milligrams a day of THC and showed no signs at all of intoxication. And that can just show the depth of the endocannabinoid deficiency that they have.
Intoxication, because for me, it triggers my, my neural system where I have most of my problems with my spinal bifida and my, all the other stuff that I face, cardiac malformation and whatnot, so that helps me. I use it mainly for neuro, so I'm going to be looking you guys up for the neuro stuff for sure, and then I'll get Chris hooked up.
Yeah, we have 5 different neural blends at Unity, so that's a big target of ours. And with autism, like when you look at the history, we took cannabis off of the market as our mainstream medicine in 1937 by taxing it too much and calling it marijuana and creating the stigma. It was just a couple of years later that the very first case of autism ever seen by a doctor was written into the medical journals. And now we know that the cannabinoid receptor mutation causes autism. We know that autism is endocannabinoid deficiency. Autism is anandamide deficiency, and anandamide is THC from the plant. That's what builds that deficiency.
People's kids, like our friends' kids and stuff. But,
oh my gosh.
And my kid, at first he was afraid to try it, and I'm like, bro, I use it all the time. You need to try it. So
yeah.
21, he's okay to use it. So I'm like, oh man, you don't, he's, how the autism works in their mind. He feels like he has to be of age before he can do this and that. And I'm like, you don't have to be of age, nothing to worry about. You need to take and medicate yourself and not worry about what others think, because they're not the one with the issue or the problems.
Yeah, and I was just holding up, this is an article that published back in 2017 on the right here. My daughter's story, her success story. Cannabis with autism, with all of the research citations supporting it, cannabis for autism use. And my hour-long education presentation to nurses that I just delivered a couple of weeks ago was called Cannabis for Autism Harm Reduction, and comparing like the pharmaceutical options with the cannabis options, and just dichotomy that cannabis with an unsurpassed safety profile that's never killed anybody in thousands of years of use is so heavily restricted.
He goes forward in his life like he's never
taken
anything like that.
That's good. Yeah. The smart parents know better, or the ones that have experienced this dichotomy of yet we're freely allowing opioids to kill people every half hour. Like, wait a minute, it makes you start to question. No judgment to those that use pharmaceuticals, because I understand the desperation. So thank you.
Well, it looks like we got time for maybe one more.
One last question. Yep, I got one last question. This one's kind of an oddball one, but you were talking and it kind of reminded me of this, because we've had this discussion a couple times. Like you said, 1937, Anslinger, he made hemp illegal, tax acts, all that stuff that made marijuana illegal. But we were discussing one time that we used to feed our cattle hemp seed and hemp grain and hemp stock, and a lot of people believe that we started getting a lot of the problems we've had because we've removed that hemp stock that the cows would eat, and then get in their body, and then they come out, we'd eat it and then be in our bodies. Is there any any science behind that, or are we just kind of talking high?
No, I really do think there's something to that. What we can see if we look at our population in the last century, from 1937 to today, is that we've had this explosion in chronic illness. We know that chronic illness is endocannabinoid deficiency. We know there's multiple things that contribute to that, like we were talking about. But we also know that prior to 1937, we were feeding our cattle and our chickens hemp. And so we had CBD in our eggs, in our meat, in our milk. And all of a sudden that's gone. And all of a sudden we have an explosion of chronic illness and endocannabinoid deficiency. So I do believe that is one of the contributors for sure.
Nice. Well, thank you. Well, this has been awesome. I think, Bree, we're going to have you close it out.
Yeah. So everyone, thank you so much. Jana, thank you for joining us. This has just been so wonderful. Really appreciate your time and your dedication to this work, and just taking some time out of your day to do this for us. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. Everybody check out Unity Formulas, amazing creations.
I'll go
Hopefully
back
we
to
can do
those.
this again someday. And everyone have a wonderful evening. Jana, we'll see you soon. Everybody
Thank you,
take care.
babies.
Have a good
You guys
night.
have a good night.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.